that these kids know they're sick, but they need help, but they're determined to live. And I just thought, well, the battle that I was about to fight by running over 5.5 million footsteps across America was in no way as difficult as the battle that these kids are fighting for their own life. So I just, having met the kids, I just knew that when times were going to be tough, running through the desert, 120 degrees, running over the Rocky Mountains, 14,000 feet in elevation, I would just think back to them and thinking, look what they're going through. And what I'm going through is obviously nothing in comparison. And put your big boy pants on and keep going and keep going and keep going. And I did. And I finished on August 29th, 1978 in Fenway Park.
Hey everyone, welcome to Fundraising in 26.2 Pod. In this next episode, I sit down with running legend Dave McGillivray. Dave is a pioneer in charity running. We cover grounds for both charity runners as well as nonprofits who wants to be a charity partner for some of the iconic races like Boston Marathon. So either you are a charity runner who is fundraising for your next race, or a nonprofit who wants to be a charity partner for some of the iconic races. This conversation is filled with some practical tips. I hope you enjoy it. I'm your host, Kamal Dada. Thanks for listening. Welcome, Dave, to this pod. I'm really excited to have you here today.
Hey, good to join you again very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, now I was listening to a recent pod that you did about your upcoming Ironman. Is it the next race you're training for?
Yeah, this will be my 10th Kona, Hawaii Ironman World Championship participation. I did my first one in 1980.
Oh, wow.
It was the third year of the race. There were only 108 of us in the race. I ended up finishing 14th overall, and then I went back and did it in 1983, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, and 89. So I did it 8 times in the 80s, and then I didn't go back again for 25 years, and once in 2014, and did it then, and now it's been 10 years since then. And I just turned 70 a few weeks ago, and I thought, well, what do I want for my birthday? I'll give myself a present. Go kill yourself at Ironman.
Well, belated happy birthday, Dave.
Thank you. So in another month and a little bit, I'll be doing my 10th.
Oh, wow. That's a big number. And also on your 70th birthday after taking almost a 10-year break. So that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Is that the cadence? So 2014 means you were 60 that time. So basically, you decide to kill yourself on your big number.
I just, I always like to challenge myself, and it's always good to have a target or have a magnet, to go after, to sort of incentivize you to get out of bed and get the work done. So I wouldn't be doing all this swimming and biking that I'm currently doing if I didn't have that as a goal. So it's really gotten me into pretty good shape for a 70-year-old at this stage. So I'm happy that I'm doing it, but I'll also be glad when it's done.
No, all the very best, Dave.
Thank you.
Now, for our discussion today, I want to take you back in 1978, the race that you did from Medford, Oregon to Medford, Mass. That's one of the iconic races of 3,400 plus miles that you did. One of the event also did that you ran that, or you did that event to raise fund for Jimmy Fund. I'll be curious, first of all, why did you take on such an ginormous task? And second thought, how did you associate yourself with Jimmy Fund or fundraising in general? With that major race or task?
Always wanting to be an athlete my whole life I've challenged myself. I once went after the Guinness Book of Records for sit-ups and push-ups. And just
Yeah.
as a little kid, I was just driven to achieve, especially being small in stature. There weren't a lot of opportunities for me to obviously play professional sports or, compete with the big boys. So I just set personal, individual challenges. And I had heard about a friend of mine who had biked across the country, and I thought that was pretty amazing at the time. But then I said, well, I'm not a biker, I'm a runner. If he can bike across, I can run across. Well, that's kind of a idiotic comparison. Biking and running are different. But I said, no, I'm going to research this a little bit and make a commitment and see if I can do it. And so as I was planning it and training for it, just this epiphany occurred that maybe I need a greater purpose to get through this. How am I sure that I'm going to be able to run 45, 50 miles a day, every day, without a day off, in all kinds of conditions and all kinds of terrain as a 23-year-old when I've never done anything even remotely like this? And I said, maybe there needs to be a greater purpose. And I was in my office at the time. I was an actuary, and I was I was in the John Hancock Tower in Boston, and I looked out the window. I saw Fenway Park, which is where I wanted to play second base for the Boston Red Sox. Never got a chance to do that. But I saw a sign out in right field, and the sign said, "Help make a dream come true. Support the Jimmy Fund." I wasn't really sure what the Jimmy Fund was all about. So I picked up the phone and called, and a guy by the name of Ken Coleman answered. Ken was the voice of the Boston Red Sox, ironically, but also the executive director of the Jimmy Fund. And I said, "Hi, Mr. Coleman. My name is Dave, and I want to run across the country for the Jimmy Fund." Well, after he picked himself up off the floor, he says, "Come on in and meet with me." And I did, and we cut the deal. And he said, "The Red Sox will support you, and the Jimmy Fund will support you." And then I went and I visited the kids in the Jimmy Fund clinic. And I saw a sign in the clinic, and the sign said, "God made only so many perfect hits. The rest of them have hair on it." And it just struck me about the whole concept of resilience, and determination, and courage and guts. That these kids know they're sick, but they need help, but they're determined to live. And I just thought, well, the battle that I was about to fight by running over 5.5 million footsteps across America was in no way as difficult as the battle that these kids are fighting for their own life. So I just, having met the kids, I just knew that when times were going to be tough, running through the desert, 120 degrees, running over the Rocky Mountains, 14,000 feet in elevation, I would just think back to them and thinking, look what they're going through. And what I'm going through is obviously nothing in comparison. And put your big boy pants on and keep going and keep going and keep going. And I did. And I finished on August 29th, 1978 in Fenway Park, where I wanted to play second base. If I wasn't going to play in Fenway, I was going to run in Fenway. So I ran into Fenway Park in front of 32,000 people. And they called it Jimmy Fund Night at Fenway, and hundreds of thousands of dollars were raised. And that just began my whole journey in terms of combining athleticism and event management with philanthropy. And pretty much everything I've done since then, I've done it, like I said, for a greater purpose. And, collectively, between what I've done personally and what I've done through my business, and all the events that we've put on over the years, easily have helped, not individually raise, but helped raise probably $300-400 million for all kinds of different causes. So yeah, it's been my whole life. I mean, I saw in Runner's World magazine once, a number of years ago, that they said that run in '78 was the first time someone had combined running with raising money for cancer research. And I thought, are they saying I'm like a pioneer of combining, endurance sports with fundraising? But no one really was doing it before then. So maybe without even knowing it, that was one of the first times that it had been done. And look what's going on in the world today. It's pretty amazing.
Oh, it is. It is. And I think you are also the Jimmy Fund or Jimmy Award recipient as well, because I think you are over the years contributed so much through you personally yourself and through your foundation and through DMSE Sports as well, the events you organize. So that's pretty amazing. So I was looking at kind of the history of how the endurance sports and charity events kind of married and have such an amazing partnership today. And some of the things are like one of the earliest, maybe it's recorded, was in 1969 for a hunger walk. They raised around 25,000. It was the first kind of recorded event where they raised fund. And I think it says in 1988, the Leukemia and the Lymphomia Society launched the team in training. I think it's still probably in active and doing amazing things. But I think your run in 1978, so it falls in the kind of the beginning of like how it got all started.
Yeah.
Did you what was the landscape that time? Did you know, because you are involved in endurance sports and especially running? How was the landscape at that time, like early 80s or late 70s?
Right around that time, I mean, I ran across the country, and then when I finished, my then boss at the time said, "Hey, you're coming back to work tomorrow." I said, "Tomorrow? I just ran across a continent. I need a few days, and a few days later, I got a termination letter, and I just ran across the country to raise money for sick kids, and I got fired." And when I think about it, it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because it made me realize that maybe that wasn't the direction or the path that I wanted to take. Maybe I wanted to go in a different direction. So I opened up a athletic footwear and clothing store in my hometown. And I started putting on events to promote the store. And then I realized I like putting on events more than shoes on people's feet.
Yeah.
And people kept looking at me like with crossed eyes, going, "You really think you can earn a living putting on road races?" Because nobody was doing it then. I mean, it was a handful of races and that's it. And most of them were being put on by just runners who just put on a race. It wasn't being done professionally, I guess you could say, at the time.
Yeah.
I said, "Well, I'm not just putting on a race." "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, in my mind, I'm helping to raise the level of self-confidence and self-esteem of tens of thousands of people in America, because that's what these events do." And I said, "Watch, over the next few years, you'll see." That's exactly what happened. As we started putting on these events, people started flocking to them. They wanted to challenge themselves, and I always get asked, "What's the toughest part about running a marathon?" I always say, well, for most people, the toughest part is signing the application, making the commitment, and then you have to earn the right. You earn the right by doing the work and by training and putting in the time, and then you toe the line, you answer the gun, you run the course, you cross the finish line, you get a medal, and you go home, and magic happens. You feel good about yourself. And there's nothing more powerful in this world than to feel good about yourself, because it's the foundation by which we accomplish everything in our lives. And I had a good sense for all of that back then. And so I started putting on more and more events. And then I started putting on events, to raise money for charity. And then charities recognized how much money can be raised by events. simply because of the sheer numbers of participants.
Right.
And there's power in numbers. So if you get 1,000 people all fundraising $500, raise a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
So they kind of gave up their car washes and their cake sales, and they started, coming up with putting on events themselves. And then they realized how difficult it is to put on an event. So
Mm-hmm.
then they started hiring me to put on their event while they focused on the fundraising effort. So all this was happening pretty much in the 1980s, and it just grew and grew and grew. And today, I mean, just the Boston Marathon alone, this past April, all the charities collectively raised over $70 million.
Wow.
Just by runners running in the marathon.
Yeah.
In a sense, right?
That's true.
So it's pretty fascinating, and it's a phenomenon in fundraising, combining, fundraising with endurance sports. And I think there's a connection between the event, the prestigiousness of the event, the distance of the event, the degree of difficulty of the event. I mean, the more difficult it is, the more fundraising people seem to do. Like if you do a 5K, you're not going to raise $100,000. But if you do a marathon or an Ironman distance race, you could get out there and people could be writing big checks, and you could end up raising $20,000, $30,000, $50,000 for your charity. So, and that's what's going on.
Yeah. No, that's pretty amazing. I was looking at kind of the adaptation of the current state. Like, so as you mentioned, Boston Marathon raised 70 million this year alone. Looks like Boston, and the count may be off here and there, but like more than 160 charity partners. Chicago has 190 charity partners. New York City has 300 plus charity partners. And where London has more than 75% of the runners actually are raising fund. Yeah, which is pretty phenomenal number. The adoption car, when do you think that it took off? Like, okay, you pioneered the way that, hey, we can combine that. Charity partners realize that this is a great way of raise fund. When do you think it took off? Like early 80s, mid 80s?
Well, I think it took off. It happened not necessarily by design per se. What happened was, at least in my personal experiences, as this endurance sports world just started really exploding, and more races were created, and more races were selling out. Once races started selling out, meaning I want to get in, but I can't because they've reached their self-imposed field size limit, then the value of that entry just skyrocketed. And race directors started getting the hint and realizing that, and they said, if we tie a few charities into our event, then we can, if we have a field size limit of 5,000 runners, we can set aside 500 of these numbers and fill the field size with 4,500 runners, and then leave the last 500 and say to various charities, if you want these numbers, you can buy them from us, and then you can go out and get runners to run for you and raise whatever your minimum fundraising amounts might be. And then that whole concept just took off. And that's when charities in particular, and even the races, because the races, they want the goodwill associated with all that money being raised. The races themselves aren't necessarily writing a check.
Right.
If anything, the races are making more money because they're selling the bib number at a higher price to the charity, knowing that the charity then is going to go get 5-10 times the amount in fundraising from a runner to run on their behalf in order to get the bib, which gets them into a race that they otherwise were closed out from.
Right.
So it's sort of a win-win-win in the sense that the race makes more money off the bib, the charities make huge amounts of money, and the runner gets into the race that they otherwise would not have been able to get in.
Right.
And in a sense, the runner's just paying the entry fee because the runner's doing the work to go to family and friends to get them to give them the money. They're not, if the minimum fundraising is $2,000, the runner's not writing a check for $2,000. They're getting 10 people to give them 200 each, or 20 people to give them 100 each, or 50 people to give them $40, whatever the math works out to be. So it has absolutely taken off. Taken off. And, you know, where we may once have had 30 charities, we have over 200 now. We could have 1,000, but with Boston, it's different than the other races, because with Boston, we have qualifying standards, and we don't want to, you know, sort of pilfer off of that. We want to make sure that people who qualify for the race can get in as much as possible. So about 80% of the people who qualify get in to Boston. About 80% of our field are people who qualify, and 20% are special invitations, and the majority of those are charity members. So there's a delicate balance between how many people you let in who qualify versus how many people get in on a invitational waiver. Other races, like a London or whoever, they can make their whole race a charity race if they want to. But we can't do that, only because of what, you know, we're about the pursuit of athletic excellence, number one.
True.
But then we have a charity component tied to that too.
Yeah. Would you say, Dave, that the iconicness or kind of the popularity of a race kind of play a significant role in terms of what charity partners they attract?
Without a doubt. I mean, if the race is popular, then again, most likely it sells out. Because it sells out, you can set aside bibs for charities. And why wouldn't I'm sitting here right now, I have charity numbers to the Chicago Marathon, my own foundation. And probably I get 20 dings a day on my computer saying $100 was just donated on behalf of Sally Smith running for your foundation in the Chicago Marathon. I'm just sitting here, and the money's just rolling in. I don't know any of these people. And I'm saying, this is amazing. I'm not doing anything, and I'm just watching my computer, and the money's just rolling in. You know, and it's all good. But why wouldn't any charity want that kind of situation, you know, where they get the bibs? The tough part, if there is a tough part, depending on the race, is just finding the runners to run for you and willing to commit to raise the minimum fundraising amount.
Right. So I want to talk a little bit on this, because you are actually part of the whole ecosystem. First of all, you're a runner, you raised. You have a foundation who raises runners that, and you are also an event organizer through DMSE Sports, and you're also the race director for Boston Marathon. So you see that end to end. If I take the example of a charity, like what does it take for them to associate themselves with an event like Boston, or say Falmouth that you also produce?
Well, every race has their own criteria.
Sure.
You know, a motto in my life is it's my game, so it's my rules. That's how I roll. It's my life, it's my rules. So if I want to do this, then I do it. Well, same thing with races. It's your race, it's your rules. So there's no standard. There's no one telling you have to do something a certain way. So every race is different in terms of how they may set up their nonprofit program. But the majority of them, you know, they have a mission statement. You know, they're all about something, whatever that something is. Generally speaking, it could be youth, health, fitness, you know, that kind of path. So that, you know, when they open up the whole charity program, you have to apply. So you have to fill out an application, say who you are, how long you've been a nonprofit, what your mission is, what would you do? What are you going to do with the money that you raise? The list goes on and on and on. And then they apply, and then there's a committee that, obviously goes through all the applications and determines which charities they feel most align themselves with your mission. And then they select so many, and they have to, unfortunately, turn away a whole bunch. So that's how it works. Generally, that's how it works. I mean, sometimes it could be a lottery.
Okay.
Sometimes it could be charities who commit to raising a certain amount of money, because again, the race wants to show the community and the world that their race was partially responsible for millions of dollars being raised for worthy causes.
Makes sense.
So everyone has their different policies and rules.
Yeah. And then, Dave, I'm not sure, if you're able to share any numbers or not. The race beeps that a charity partner gets, is that based on the charity themselves? Or like, for example, say American Red Cross is having 1,000 beeps they got versus another charity got 100. Like, how does that happen if you look at?
That's a good question. And again, every race is different.
Right.
Some races, because they only have a certain number allotted or available, right? Each race. Decide if you have 10,000 people in your race, you may say, we're only making 3,000 available for charity fundraising of the 10. The other 7,000, first come, first serve. We can't require everyone in the race to be raising money, or a lot of people don't have the connections, the contacts, the networking that other people do. So it would be hard for them to fundraise, or they've been fundraising for races all year. You can only go to the well so many times. So, but each race sets a certain percentage of their overall number of bibs for maybe fundraising purposes, for charitable purposes. And then I guess it also depends on how many apply, how many charities apply. So if you have 2,000 bibs available and, 100 charities apply, then that's only on average 20 per charity, 20 bibs per charity. But, some you may want to give more to, and others you may want to give less to, just depending on your own, race criteria,
I see.
Yeah, I mean, because again, the race wants to show the highest fundraising totals possible. So if you give 20 numbers to a really small charity and they only raise $10,000 versus give it to a more robust charity and they're able to raise $100,000, I mean, as a race, you may want to choose that charity over the small one, although another case can be made that, $10,000 or $20,000 for a small charity is a lot of money. $100,000 for a big charity may be a drop in the bucket too, right?
True. Yeah.
Well, that's why, again, everyone's different. There's no standard. Everyone has their own reasons for deciding. It could be relationships. Maybe the race has a good relationship with a specific charity and they got 10 numbers and the charity comes back and said, hey, we sold those 10 numbers in a nanosecond. Can we have 5 more? And they may say, yes, we'll send you 5 more. And they'll say, no, we don't have any more.
Okay. Okay.
So it's all evolutionary too. It's because it's become so popular now. The way these charity programs work keeps changing over the years because the demand keeps growing and all that kind of thing. So yeah, it just remains to be seen what it might look like even 5 years from now.
Interesting. If I look at it from as you're running Finish Strong Foundation, you mentioned that you have charity base for the Chicago that you're running. And if you're wearing the hat of the founder of Finish Strong, how does a charity maybe an approach putting a minimum fundraising? Like, is
Yeah.
there a mat there, or
Well, I
what
guess
goes
it
in?
depends. Yeah, I think it depends on what you're giving back in return too. Some
Okay.
charities, it's just a flat like business deal. The fundraising is $200. You get the bib. Good luck. See you later. Goodbye.
I see.
Others might say, hey, we have a coach who can help train you.
Yeah.
We have workouts every week if you're local and you're not all over the country. We get together on Saturday mornings at 8 o'clock and we train on the course. We do this, we do that. They may have, other types of, merchandise, given to, singlets and warm-ups and hats and gloves and this, that, and the other thing. They may have sponsors of their charity programs. So the runners get the benefit of sponsor merchandise. They may get discount opportunities at retail stores.
I see.
So it all depends on the package that the charity puts together to offer to a team member. And then the more robust the package, maybe the more they can justify asking as a minimum. But I'll tell you, it's going up and up and up. I mean, most major marathons now, it's between $5,000 and $10,000.
Yeah.
And even north of that. And, people are more than happy to run for a charity to get into a race. But when they're asked, by the way, you got to raise $10,000, they're like, huh? I can't raise. I mean, I don't have a lot of high rolling friends that are multimillionaires here. I just got my neighbors and a couple of cats and dogs, and so I can maybe raise $300, but I can't raise $5,000 or $10,000. So unfortunately, those people get left on the curb, even though a case could be made that they deserve just as much as anyone to run in the race. Their passion, their dedication, their commitment, their desire is all there. And then it comes down to, instead of having to have to qualify to participate in a race, you have to commit to a fundraising number. And then what some charities end up doing is to make sure you follow through with the commitment.
Right.
They'll take your credit card.
Yeah.
And if the commitment is, $3,000 and you fundraise $2,000 and the race is over and the deadline has gone by, then they'll ding your credit card for the balance.
Right.
So as much as it's philanthropic and it's all good, it's definitely a business too.
Agree. Yeah. No, I remember that because I did in 2018 Boston to one of the charities too, and exactly the same process I went through. Because as you mentioned, I don't know a lot of people around, and it was 5-digit number that I have to raise, so it was big amount as well.
No, I get it.
Now, if you look at the other side of selecting participants or people who can run for your charity, like what do you look for? Well,
again, a lot of it has to do with the ability to fundraise.
Yeah.
But that aside, I think it's sometimes people might want to keep it local to the race so that you can all get together and truly be a team versus people from all over the country or all over the world. Maybe there's priority given to local runners to that event versus someone from way outside of the local area. That could be a factor. And beyond that, maybe just some sort of sense that this person is serious about the commitment, is willing to do the work, and definitely has an affinity or a vested interest in the charity too. I mean, obviously, once the race is over and that runner has raised whatever they raised for that charity, the charity still would like to maintain a relationship with that person. And maybe that person continues to fundraise and give to the charity throughout the year, maybe at other events that charity is hosting, that these people attend because they care about the charity, not just the bib member.
Right.
So, I mean, I would personally, charitably, like my foundation or whatever, I would look more if there's an overwhelming demand to run for my charity and I have to go through this whole selection process. That's certainly one factor that I would weigh high is what is their true interest in the charity, not just the bid number.
I see. No, that makes total sense, and I think that is also the deterministic for a success point of view to how successful they would be to fundraise. If they connect with the charity versus I'm just looking for a bib and may connect with the charity. Yeah.
In some cases, that's okay too, because that's what this is about. It's about raising money for the charity.
Yeah.
Some charities don't care who run for them; they just want the money.
That's true.
That's a negative thing. I mean, that's what it's. I mean, at the end of the day, it's fundraising. That's why we're calling it fundraising in 26.2.
Yeah.
But if you can have it all, have someone local, have someone passionate, committed, have someone who really cares about the charity, has someone who will help promote your charity and all that kind of stuff, then you've got an ideal candidate.
I see. I was looking at the numbers, like in 2023, around 2 billion of raised to charity runners. It's a massive number. And your Falmouth race since 2000, it raised more than $63 million, which is also a staggering number. Yeah.
I mean, I was just at our Falmouth wrap up the other night.
Yeah.
And the charity coordinator announced to date what the charity program has raised from this year's Falmouth Road race is $7.7 million. And, Falmouth is a 7-mile road race. It isn't a marathon. It's not one of the world marathon majors. It's not an Ironman. I mean, it's a prestigious road race in America. It's been around for 52 years. I get all of that. But still, that is an amazing number when you think about the event,
That's
So,
true.
I mean, I bet you a case can be made, and I don't know how one does the research, but that for a race that's like under a half marathon distance, that doesn't have 20, 30, 40,000 people in it. That's got to be one of the highest, if not the highest, total that any race in the United States has raised. I have to think.
Yeah, I have not looked at it. Maybe I should research a little bit and see if I can share that.
Yeah, see who else has raised more than that, and what other than the major.
Less than a half-mile distance. Yeah, that would be good.
Half marathon distance.
Yeah. No, that would be a good number, or figure out if there is anyone else.
Yeah. Let me know if you find out.
Sure, will do. One of the reasons for the success is that the charity organizations themselves has become very sophisticated, as you alluded, like providing them training or the coach or different kinds of events, or train them, or also having a platform to fundraise. And so it has become very sophisticated nowadays that they do. How was the evolution? Because you have seen it all from where it was nothing to where it is today. How you have seen that evolution happen, that charity partners giving, not only says, hey, John Doe raised 10,000 for me, here you go do something and let me know how you do, versus I'm there with you to help you to achieve that goal. Like, how you seen that evolution over the years?
I think, charities are always looking at other charities and trying to steal best practices. And I think charities are charitable. In other words, they're willing to share. They're not trying to compete against other charities. I mean, all the charities are just as worthwhile as the next one, right?
True.
There are a lot of important causes in this world that, need money for research or whatever. So I think when a charity who may not be doing a lot behind the scenes sees a charity that is, and seeing the results of that effort, then they begin to do it themselves too. So it's infectious, in the sense. So I think they're just saying to themselves, if we just invest a little bit more effort and time in the program, the benefits could be exponential.
Right.
So if they're
Right.
raising $50,000 with 50 runners, maybe they can raise $200,000 with 50 runners if you treat them better,
That is true. Yeah.
more
Yeah.
special, and incentivize them. Say, hey, if you raise $1,000, you get dinner for two.
Yeah.
You raise $2,000, you get dinner for four. And if you raise $3,000, we'll bring you to the restaurant in a limousine and whatever. I mean, just
Being creative. Yeah.
being creative, and or even say, you raise over $5,000, then you're guaranteed an entry next year again.
I see. I see.
And maybe they want to continue to run that race consecutively, and instead of have to apply every year, if they raise a certain amount, that charity may say you're guaranteed the next year.
No, that makes sense, actually. That is evaluated.
I just made that one up. I don't know if anyone's doing it.
Yeah, I've not seen, but I know that runners who run for the same charity year over year. So I'm sure they do something to make sure that they retain.
Come back. They come back. Retention is at a high, yeah.
Yeah, so they have to do something to retain them year over year, for sure. Now, raising over 300 million plus with your effort and your organizations, Dave, I'm just curious to see, like, what do you personally get out of it?
Well,
Fundraising as a participant.
My mantra or motto has always been, when you give, you receive even more in return.
Yeah.
It's just a feeling of you had an impact, right?
Sure.
I don't need a lot of attaboys or letters of thanks. I just know, walking away, when I see the results of the efforts, I know I was able to help someone either live a more normal and healthy life, or stay alive, or feel better about themselves, whatever the cause is.
Yeah.
And how can you not benefit from that, knowing that you had a significant impact on other people? That's a greater reward than anything else anyone could give you.
True.
Right? So,
True.
And you don't want that to end. Like it's never ending. You never want to stop.
Right.
So for me, any opportunity I have to be able to help other people accomplish things, or just get through difficult times, whatever it might be, within reason, of course, then I want to do it. Because selfishly, and most people wouldn't think it's selfish, but selfishly, I'm going to get as much, if not more, out of it when it's all said and done. And you look at it that way, then you both benefit. The person you're helping benefits, but you benefit by virtue of the feeling you get from helping. And it doesn't get any better than that.
No, well said. Thank you so much. And I really enjoyed our conversation, and thank you for sharing over the years. And you are one of the pioneers who paved the way for charity runners that you call it today. And thank you for sharing the history and how we have become where we are today. So thank you so much, Dave.
Thank you. Always great to join you.